This video is going to be something really special. It's something that I really think I've waited about 50 years to be able to have happen. It's two different keyboards that approach controlling electronic sounds in very different ways. Where they're similar is that they're both extremely expressive, and they're intuitive, and they're immediate. And they allow such a drastic level of control on these synthesizers that it takes me to a place where I hear these instruments sounding like nothing I've ever heard before. And I'm very familiar with these instruments. And what we have reeled in today are 4 ARP 2600s, my 2, and complements of Rosen Sound, 2 more ARP 2600s. So we have 4 ARP 2600s and my Moog IIIc big modular synthesizer. So we have them all patched together, and each one of these synthesizers is going to be a voice. And a voice is just playing one key on the keyboard. And each voice has 3 oscillators because each of these synthesizers is capable of 3 oscillators. So we brought an expert from Philadelphia. We have Josh Madoff here, and he's new to the channel, and he's quite an expert. He's been working with these keyboards for quite a while, and he'll tell you just something quickly about the Osmose, which is the one on top, and what it excels at doing, and the Continuum, which is down here on the bottom, the red and black one, and what it excels at doing.
So the Osmose is a familiar form factor, which is the first thing that makes it easy for people to approach. What's different about it is that each key tracks pressure, then aftertouch, and vibrato per key individually, and has pretty much as many different articulations as you can come up with, is as many sounds as you can get out of one patch.
Yeah, and it looks like a keyboard, so I can play like pitches, but you can make it kind of go crazy, like in terms of how far it bends, and when I push, like it can go up like 8 octaves into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
And we're going to show you all this today. We're going to cue up these synthesizers, these big analog sounds, and play different styles of music, and we're going to do some jams, so you're going to hear a lot of music today and hear what's going on. And really, like, there's moments in this thing, and I'm going to point to them, where the synthesizers sound like nothing I've ever heard before. And then quickly on the Continuum, what's going on with this? Because this is a really different looking synthesizer.
This
controller
is what I like to call the Stradivarius of synths. It's a handmade synthesizer. As far as I'm concerned, this is the inspiration for all expressive synths that have followed, and it really is the gold standard. You have continuous pitch, you have unbelievable sensitive tracking, and then it also can change on the y-axis. And then again, it really depends on what you're controlling. If you're controlling a soft synth, you're controlling one of the 500 or 600 internal sounds, or you're controlling analogs using, these control voltage converters. It just, when I play this, the way I like to describe it is you're taking familiar sounds, like these synths or the internal sounds that sound very familiar, and they're taking them to a new level of expression you've just never experienced before.
Yeah.
With this, it makes your brain kind of break, because you can't tell if you're hearing an orchestral instrument, an organic instrument, or it goes into being synth territory. It really confuses. And that's
because your sense of pitch, like with synthesizers, is pretty much tied to keyboards. And as I remember, Bob Moog wasn't even immediately thinking of putting a keyboard on a synthesizer. They were just sliding oscillators and pitch continuums. And so we got keyboards, we got voltage control, and we've been sitting on it for 50 years. But with the Continuum, you're able to get all the nuances of what Bob Moog was thinking about, which is sliding pitch, like on a violin. There's just no middle pitch. It's just your subjective sense of pitch. And I think that's what Joss was referring to. It turned your brain around, because as you're sliding around, you're hearing these middle notes, and then you get tension, and then you can slightly resolve the tension. And this gives you this level of emotion that we don't always have at our fingertips, or we don't ever really have at our fingertips with vintage analog synths. And I find I don't need volume pedals or anything like that, or filter sweeping, because I can do it all with my fingers. And we can't wait to show you all the playing that's going to happen, and you're going to hear all these things for yourself. And I hope you get a chance to play them. So this is an amazing day. Thanks for coming out. Let's go. I'm really excited about this.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Oh, that was great. That's the best of the day. That high stuff is amazing.
What is that? You know what I mean? Like, what the hell is that?
These are sounds that I've never heard on analog synthesizers, especially in the high range. And it matters the notes you're playing, and then it matters how you're responding to the notes that you're playing, right? And then the things that you play after it. Because I noticed there's moments where you just listen. You know, because it seemed like you were hearing things you'd never heard before.
Every time, it's so crazy because we have the best source material to control probably, in the history of synthesizers in this room, and that's what we're controlling right now. But even with something simpler, like because of the level of gestural detail that you get, like I don't know what's going to happen,
Yeah.
And you have to kind of find out and explore, and then you let the sound guide you,
We're controlling 4 ARP 2600s and 1 Moog Modular 3C, massive, crown jewel of synthesizers. That's what Josh is referring to. But yeah, you're just inputting control signals into them that we've never been able to input into them before.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. And the instruments just do different things because we never were able to put that kind of a signal into there before. And it's from this controller.
Yeah, it's like it's continuous too. So that's the other thing. Like you let your hands play, and then after you do it, you kind of hear what it is you just did because there's so much going on. Continuous
and immediate. There's not like latency or anything. Certain notes just pop. Like I couldn't just do that. I couldn't. It's just, first of all, you're just basically going one note at a time with these synthesizers. Now we have all of them on one keyboard, so we can play multiple notes, but we could like ingrain change instantly at like drastic amounts that I couldn't turn those many knobs at one time that quickly and then get back to where we were, because that's what's happening. You just drive the filter up into the stratosphere and then get right back to where it was. Volume, same thing.
Yeah, and it's intuitive, like it does what you want it to. And everything in between.
Yeah, and I hear orchestral sounds like horns, and I hear just, again, other things I haven't heard before, little dancing sounds, It's quite something. It's gonna be another thing to learn. Like, it's just so exciting. It's like a fresh new look on these. I've never really gotten tired of them, but now I think there's something that's more spontaneous and immediate and expressive that I could do with them that I did dream of it.
Yeah.
And this it even surpasses it.
Well, that's saying something. I mean, it's also a different way of thinking about synthesis, because you have, traditionally you have all these sophisticated and clever ways you modulate, what more or less is like a hearing test tone, and you modulate it in all these wonderful ways and add these beautiful filters to bring organic qualities to it. We've been finding that you kind of have to dial that back for this use case, because you want most of that expression just to be from your hands.
Yeah. You don't need really pedals or anything, just your hands and whatever you're feeling.
When the pedals are kind of interesting on this, because there's Sostenuto, so I was grabbing notes.
We're using pedals in a different way. They're not filter pedals per se.
Right, so this pedal now just grabbed these 3 oscillators. Well, 3 voices. And I have 0 to 127 control with my foot. But I still have 2 voices left. I think I'm going to grab the 4th voice. But you can do it. It's really easy to see if you just grab the Moog note down low. And then
Josh is pumping the pedal to get those volume changes.
And you can also actually set the pedal for what you want in here. So it's 0 to 127 now, but I could technically set it to 54 right now and have like a different range. Let's see if this works. It takes MIDI CCs to control the Sostenuto. So this should be sustained Sostenuto 1 and Sostenuto 2. Let's see if it works. Yeah, check it out. And then I can bring in a second one. Let's go up higher. So now
you have control.
And I think I only used 3 voices, so it looks like I grabbed all the voices. Yeah, I grabbed all the voices. Let's do something simpler. 1, 2. And since it's MIDI CCs, you could actually send MIDI messages that are automated from your DAW, sync to a performance to modulate these, and then it's really something.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into some more things.
Sweet. It's so wild, man.
That is about the squirtiest thing I've ever played.
That's the word.
Love it. Hi, well, we're back the next day. We had one incredible day playing these expressive instruments and controlling vintage analog synths in a way that I've never done before. So Josh is going to, with me, explain how the patch was set up. So he's going to start and talk to you about the Osmose and the Continuum, which are basically acting in the same way. So we're switching between the two, and then everything else is the same for the patch. So why don't you start to talk about like what the signals are that are coming out of the Osmose and the Continuum?
So the first thing to know is with MPE versus MIDI, every time you play a new note, it opens up a new MIDI channel. And in this case, the Osmose is connected to a Haken CVC converter, which is also networked to a second one down there.
And CVC stands for?
Control Voltage Converter. The word converter, I guess, was extraneous at the end.
That's okay, but people know, some people know what CV is, some people don't. It's control voltage, which is the kind of signal that vintage analog synths want to see. So it's converting what you might think is MIDI, but it's a different kind of MIDI, using the same cables, but different signals. So you can get into that.
Exactly. So the big differences are, every time I play a new note, it opens up a new MIDI channel. And what that allows you to do is have continuous tracking of pressure, aftertouch, and pitch bend individually per key, up to 15 channels. And in this case, when I play one note, it opens up the first channel of control. That's channel 2, 3, and 4. And then down below is channel 5. Also have to give a big shout out to my friend Richard Cram, who brilliantly figured out how to get the two CVCs to talk to each other, so we have 8 voices of control. And of course, in classic Lippold-Haken style, the second he found out, and Lippold, by the way, is the inventor of the Continuum and probably one of the great pioneers of MPE. Lippold found out I was doing this and immediately created a new device, which is called the CVC Expander, which gives you the potential to get, at the very least, 8 voices of control. It seems like you could stack them and get 12 or 16.
Today we're doing 5, right? So Josh is playing 4 notes, so you can see all 4 lights on. So if he just plays one note, you're getting channel 1. And on channel 1, there's 4 different signals that could come out: W, X, Y, and Z. And they're also labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it continues the number scheme all the way up. So W is going to the envelope generator on the synth. X is going to the oscillators, so that's pitch. Y is going to the filters on the instruments. And Z is going to the VCA on the instruments. And the difference between the VCA, which is Z, and W is that when you use the controller Z, the sound will be gated by your finger when you play the note. So you can get a very soft attack time. And then we use W to go to the envelope generator, and we have a very short decay time on the envelope generator. And what's interesting is that when you play very lightly on the keys, there isn't enough voltage to fire the envelope generator. So your finger can kind of control whether or not you're getting an attack or not. So if you play softly or very lightly on the key, then you just get a slow opening sound, like a brass instrument that just opens up. But if you hit the note with a little bit more energy, you get enough voltage so that it'll trigger the envelope generator and we get an attack.
The VCA is opening up on the first half of key travel, and then the filter is opening up on the second half of key travel, the aftertouch. It's very intuitive. It's kind of exactly what you think it should do when you press.
Oh, right. So first you're getting just volume without brightness, so you don't have to get brightness right away. Well, that's great. Okay, and let's see what happens when you hit the note harder. You hear that little spike on the sound? That's the envelope generator versus play lightly. There's no spike. So your finger can not only control the initial attack of the sound, right? But it can also control afterward, volume. We haven't even gotten to filter yet. Now filter. And then pitch. So one more time. A spike, not a spike, volume, filter, and pitch.
And when you have all of these, in concert, that's how you get this elegant.
And it's independent on every note that you play for however many voices you have set up, and we've set up 5. So now I'd like to show you what one of the patches looks like. So the instruments we're using are the Moog IIIc, which is the big modular Moog, and 4 ARP 2600s. So I'll show you the patch on the Moog IIIc and then on one of the 2600s. Here we are at the Moog IIIc. This is the Plantasia Moog, and we're using it as voice 1. So control signal W is going straight up to the V trig in, which is just like having a gate or trigger in, and then that goes to this S trigger output, which controls the envelope generator. Then, if you follow this cable, I'm attenuating the envelope generator, then the envelope generator swings around and it controls the VCF, which is the voltage controlled filter. And that gives us the little spike on the sound. So on a Moog Modular, you do have to patch everything. So then we move to control signal X after W. X is on this cable, and I only have to put it into this jack, and it will send that signal to each of these oscillators. So I'm using the 921Bs, and it sends it to the driver, and then this driver controls the frequency of the oscillators, and it will change the frequency according to how the keyboard's played. So that's W and X covered, right? The Y cable, I'll trace it backwards, is coming in here on this yellow one, and we're sending it to the filter, directly to the filter. And I ran 2 of them because I wanted to get a lot of filter modulation. So there's more voltage going to the filter. If I only did 1 of them, you would get less. And then the last one is the Z. And the Z cable is going directly to the voltage controlled amplifier. That's this one. It's going directly from the CVC Z output into the VCA so that when you touch the key, it opens up the VCA. So that's what kind of gates the sound. And then we've got that extra little spike that's coming from W. And that's the patch. On the Moog IIIc, I did one other fun thing. The oscillators, of course, go into a mixer, and then that mixer is right here. Each oscillator goes into one of these channels on the mixer, and then the output of the mixer goes to the filter The filter output goes to the amplifier. We can follow it to the VCA. The VCA goes out the door into this final mixer, and then we have our outputs. So it's very interesting to make patches on the Moog IIIc because it requires you to kind of always be aware of every aspect of the sound. So I do like it in that way, and I think it's worthwhile tracing these steps. The last thing I did just for fun, one of the oscillators is a rectangular wave. So you can see that there's two sawtooths. Oscillator 3 has a sawtooth, oscillator 2 has a sawtooth. The first one is a rectangular wave, and so I can control the pulse width of that waveform, and I'm doing that with this oscillator. It's a 901B up here, and it's in low frequency. You can see low right here, and I drive the frequency really low. So it's basically this just slow undulating pulse width modulation. So you get a little more rich waveform here. Kind of lives a little bit. So there's just a lot of little nuances that happen, and with all the expression, you get a very alive sound, kind of like, you know, closer and closer to what you might consider a real instrument, you know, like a violin or something like that, that's developed over time to deliver a lot of expression. So the other voices consist of 4 ARP 2600s, and I'm going to dive into one of them. They all have the same patch on them, so if you see what's going on with one, you can recreate it on all the other 3. So we're moving on to the ARP 2600 patch. There's 4 ARP 2600s in this overall patch, but I'm going to show you what's going on one of them, and it's repeated on the other ones. So starting with signal W, coming from the CVC, W, X, Y, and Z. So W is sending a gate to the envelope generator. So on the ARP 2600, if I put the switch down, it's not going to receive a gate from the keyboard of the ARP 2600. It's going to receive a gate from W from the CVC. And that will trigger whatever shape I have here on this ADSR envelope generator. Now I'm going to show you what's coming from X on channel 1 of the CVC. And that signal is coming in right here, input to this multiple. So I can make 3 of them. First one goes to oscillator 1 input, and it's calibrated to 1 volt per octave. Second one goes to oscillator 2, same thing, calibrated to 1 volt per octave. The third one goes to oscillator 3, calibrated to 1 volt per octave. Now we have pitch control that's coming from the keyboard, controlling the pitch of the oscillators on the ARP 2600. So moving on to the CVC control output Y. Control output Y is sending a signal directly to the filter. So VCF, voltage control filter of the ARP 2600, here's the control input, and then the attenuators all the way up. So we're getting the maximum amount of filter sweep on the ARP 2600 when you push a note down on the Osmose. You can hear that right now. If I had less, wouldn't go as far. You can hear that, so we like lots, because you can control it. If you don't want a lot, you don't push as hard. Resonance without resonance. And I can make the initial start be higher by moving the initial cutoff frequency. Okay, and then the last signal, control output Z, coming from channel 1 to the voltage processor section of the ARP 2600, and I'm using it because it has a lag processor in it. And what that's doing is taking a gate from the CVC that has very sharp edges and just rounding off the front and the end a little bit so I don't hear too much of a click. So when Josh plays the initial sound on the Osmose, it's softer. It would be a little clickier if I had not rounded the sound off. Yeah, you hear that little click? So that softens it up, and now we don't have the click. And then that output goes directly to the linear control input of the voltage controlled amplifier, VCA, of the 2600, and that's normaled directly to the mixer output. So it's pretty simple. So I'll recap it and make it very simple. Control signal W controls the envelope generator, time. Control signal X controls the voltage controlled oscillators, pitch. Control signal Y controls the filter, brightness. Control signal Z controls the voltage controlled amplifier, volume. All that's controllable at the fingertips. You kind of forget about all this when you're over there playing, and you can just be intuitive and play your music and get all of this stuff to move however you move your fingers. And I could never do that. Like, I couldn't play a keyboard like the ARP 2600 has, it's just basically on and off, and move all these different parameters and get them back to the starting place. That's what this is doing for us. So that's multiplied 4 times, or 3 more times, a total of 4 times, and each one is a voice, so a note. So when you play a 5-note chord on the Osmose, you're getting a Moog IIIc on the first note, an ARP 2600 on the second, an ARP 2600 on the third, ARP 2600 on the fourth, and an ARP 2600 on the 5th note. And here they all are in their beauty, and they're actually all different vintage ARP 2600, so they have a little bit of different character, kind of like each violin in a violin section. Different player, different violin maker, different wood. They all sound a little different, the same but different. They're all violins, they're all ARP 2600s, and we get the same but different chord with a lot of beauty and a lot of just sort of nuances. These little differences, though, make up what our ear picks up as interest. So I couldn't be more excited to be at the precipice of this new technology and new way of expressing electronic music. So as part of the recap, I just want you to hear when Josh plays each synth coming in on each note, and we're calling those a voice. So the first one, that's the Moog IIIc, up high. First 2600, second 2600, third 2600, fourth 2600. Swelling the filter, and he can control all 5 of these instruments, all in real time, all from this keyboard, and all independently. Give it a go. Let's see. It's so much fun. That's the Moog IIIc only. Channel 1 with all 4 parameters going. Then he can add another voice. That's another 2600 on top with complete independence. Then he can add another voice. He can have 2 parts in the top with a bass. And he can add a 3rd voice in the right hand and a 4th voice. Oh, there you go. What more can you ask for? I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I hope it's as inspiring for all of you as it has been for us. I know Josh and I have talked about it, like, we both had a chance to, I had a little bit of time to work on these instruments. Josh has had a lot of time, but he said it to me, like, today it's just another level, bringing new instruments into the game. So we want to bring these types of videos to you more and more. Please remember to like and subscribe. It means a lot to my team and me. And thank you all for being there for the channel and supporting the channel. Josh, thank you for being here. It's Josh's birthday. He chose to spend his birthday here today. It's a memorable day for me. I hope it is for you, and
very much.
More to come.
Yes.